Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum students of grade 6. I'm here with lecture number 11 and today we shall read about Gulliver's Travels. That's the novel, the reader for your grade 6. Before starting today's lecture, let's see the previous lecture. That was related to nouns and articles. Which articles? Definite articles and indefinite articles. Indefinite articles, we learned certain rules that the choice between a or an is determined by the sound, like those words that begin with a vowel sound gets an with them, and a is used before a word beginning with a consonant. We use a or an with prices, frequency, and speeds before hundred, thousand, and million for talking about jobs, and with a noun to talk about a person or thing for the first time. Then we learned about the definite article, that's the. It is used when we talk about a particular person or a thing, when a singular noun is meant to represent a whole class, before some proper names, before names of certain books, before names of things that are unique of their kind, with superlatives, with ordinals, before musical instruments, and before an adjective when a noun is understood. Now let's come to today's lecture, Gulliver's Travels. That's written by Jonathan Swift. For that, you have to open up your novels, page number 7. And the objectives for today's lecture are to enable the students to enhance reading skills, to improve comprehension, to promote vocabulary and language skills. Today we shall read chapter number 2, that is A Prisoner, and chapter number 3, The Journey to the City. But first, we shall just have a quick view of chapter number 1 that we read earlier. The novel begins with Lemuel Gulliver. Lemuel Gulliver, who was he? The narrator of this novel, and he is also the hero, recounting the story of his life. Recounting means telling or unfolding the story of his life, beginning with his family history. He becomes a surgeon on a ship called the Swallow for 3 years. Afterwards, he accepts a job on a ship called the Antelope. Do you remember all these things, children? And on his voyage to the East Indies, he is shipwrecked and swims for his life. All of his crew members were lost, and he gets safe on the shore in the city in a country called Lilliput. One thing that is very important, that Gulliver begins the story of his journeys by telling the reader a great deal of background information, such as where he was born, which schools he attended, and about his profession. And you know the reason why he did this? The reader learns that Gulliver began his life in a very usual way. What's the importance of this, children? He was basically a middle class and had to work for his living. By setting up the narrator as a normal person in the beginning of the book, in fact, Jonathan Swift, the writer of this novel, helps the readers to sense that Gulliver is trustworthy and just a regular guy whom they can relate to. So, throughout this novel, children, we will relate ourselves to Gulliver because he's just a normal person, an ordinary person like everybody. Okay, now let's come to chapter number 2. So your books should be opened on page number 7. Chapter number 2 is a prisoner. And the first topic there is tied to the ground. Tied to the ground is the first topic in chapter number 2, and it suggests, the title suggests whatever will happen in it. What do you guess? What would be there in this lesson, tied to the ground? Obviously, Gulliver must be tied to the ground by the Lilliputians, the little people. This chapter starts with these sentences. I slept very well for about 9 hours. When I woke up, I tried to get on to my feet, but I could not move. Children, remember that these bold type words are the extracts from your novel. Fine. Like, I'm not going to read the whole novel. You will be reading it yourself just to make you understand this novel. We are going through all this. Okay, so for 9 hours he slept. Gulliver finds himself tied down to the ground and surrounded by a crowd of 6-inch high people. And who were those 6-inch high people? The Lilliputians. In fact, Gulliver's arms and legs, they were tied to the ground. His long, thick hair also were tied to the ground, and he could feel several thin pieces of strings across his body. His whole body was tied down, or except only just one part of his body, and that was his eyes. He could only move his eyes. This was the biggest surprise of my life, Gulliver says. Why is the biggest surprise for him? Can you imagine? Just little people like these Lilliputians standing in front of you. Obviously, we would also be surprised to see such people or creatures in front of us. I could not believe it. I was so surprised that I shouted very loudly. Now, children, relate yourself to this. If you imagine or if you see a giant shouting very loudly in front of you, what would you do? Okay, when Gulliver shouted very loudly, they get frightened. Lilliputians got frightened and runs away from him to save themselves. Some of them get hurt while they jumped away from him because they were standing. Earlier, they were climbing onto him to have a clear look of Gulliver. They were just moving on his body. Some of them were hurt quite badly when they fell off my body. Okay, next topic is I tried to get free. These titles, these lesson names are very important because they tell you the whole story. I tried to get free. Obviously, Gulliver was trying to get himself free. Now let's see. Was he successful in that or not? Gulliver was surrounded by little Lilliputians, speaking a language he doesn't understand. See, children, those little people, those who fell down from his body, soon they came back to him. One of them came very close to him to have a clear look at Gulliver. Gulliver roars out. Oh my God, he shouted. Why he roars out? Because he says that I began to feel more and more uncomfortable because his arms and legs were hurting. He could not move them. So he tried to get free, and soon he manages to free his left arm. He was successful in getting his left arm free. It was very painful, but he was able to loosen some more stakes that held his hair also. So now he was able to move his left arm, and he was also able to move his, or rather turn his head just around about 2 inches. Next is the little people shoot arrows at me. So when he tried to get himself free, what do you guess? How would those little Lilliputians be feeling? They must be frightened of him. So what happened here? Gulliver struggles to get himself free. And as I was doing this, the little people ran away. And then Gulliver heard someone shouting an order in a loud voice. And what was that? The frightened Lilliputians fired dozens of tiny arrows into his hand, face, and body. He did not feel the arrows on his clothes, but definitely he felt those arrows that went into his face and his left hand. Why his left hand? Because his left hand was free and he was just trying to save himself from those arrows. These felt just like sharp needles and were very painful. So he shouted with pain, and these were so painful needles just pricking his face. So he covered his face with his left hand and tried to break all the strings. He wanted to get free, and the little people, what they did, they shot more and more arrows on him. So some people, some of the Lilliputians also tried to push the spears into him. So all the arrows, all the spears went throughout his body. So although he gets disturbed, but he decides to lie still until night time. Why until night time, children? Because you see, he felt that his left hand is free, his left hand was not tied, so he thought that it would be easy for him to get free later on when they all would be sleeping. As soon as it would get dark, he would get away from there. When he was standing up, he was sure that he could beat the little soldiers who were left to watch him. But that plan was not needed. So staying still till night was not needed now, because when the little people saw that I was lying still, Gulliver says that when they saw that I was lying still, they stopped shooting. Next is a small man speaks to me. Who is that small man? And what was he speaking? What was he talking about? This lesson begins with: soon after this, I began to hear a knocking sound. What was knocking sound? It made Gulliver think that someone was making something. I did not want to frighten the soldiers again. I moved my head very carefully and very slowly. The Lilliputians built a stage. So Gulliver was able to see that Lilliputians were building a stage. To Gulliver's side, that is about 1.5 feet tall, upon which a person stands. In fact, there were 4 people standing on them, and one out of those people was taller than the others, and he seemed more important too. He makes a 10-minute speech to Gulliver in a language that Gulliver was unable to understand, obviously. Sometimes he sounded kind, and sometimes he sounded angry. Gulliver was not able to understand his language, his words, whatever he was saying, he was unable to understand, but obviously he was noticing his gestures, his expressions, that sometimes he was kind and sometimes he was angry. Gulliver also tried to speak to him, but obviously, of course, those Lilliputians were also unable to understand Gulliver even. So what happened that Gulliver opened up his mouth, he pointed to it because he was feeling hungry. Yes, he was feeling hungry. So he signals that he wants food and drink because he was also getting thirsty as it was a hot day. Okay, next. What happens next? See the picture. Children, these illustrations, the pictures in the book are very important. They tell you a lot about what is going to happen next. What can you see in this picture? A man lying on his right side because you see he was able to free his left hand and he is holding something, he is drinking something with his left hand, but his right hand is still tied, and few people standing on the ladder close to him, in front of him, offering him something. Yes. Okay, now let's see. I am given food and drink. He left the platform and ordered. He left, that important person, he left the platform and ordered some people to place ladders against my sides. Who is this, my children? Gulliver, obviously. They did that at once. At once they did that. What does this word at once show? That those people were very obedient towards their authorities. As soon as he ordered them to place ladders against Gulliver's eyes, they did that at once. The Lilliputians bring baskets of meat and several loaves of bread. I ate 2 or 3 pieces in one mouthful. Why? Was he so hungry? No, because they were so tiny to him. That's why he ate 2 or 3 pieces in one mouthful. I showed them that I was thirsty. The Lilliputians also bring 2 barrels of drink. Why the barrels of drink? You see, when he asked them that I am thirsty, they thought about this for a little time. They did not have any cups or glasses that were big enough for Gulliver. So then someone had a very clever idea. So they offered him a drink in barrel, which he enjoys, which Gulliver enjoys, even though they are smaller than half pinned together. The little people were very pleased. Why they were pleased? Because Gulliver had eaten their food. He enjoyed their food, and the little people, they were very happy to see all that. Gulliver admits that as he lies on the ground, he often thinks of taking a 50 of the small creatures in his hand and just crushing them. But he did not do this. Why? Why, children? What do you guess that he did not do this? Why he did not crush them? Obviously, he was able to do that. There were 2 reasons behind that. I did not do this as they had been so kind to me, because they had offered him the food and drink. They were so kind to him. And also, Gulliver does not want to be pricked with arrows again. Yes, that was a very painful thing they did with Gulliver. Okay. Now the next is I remain a prisoner. I thought these little people were very brave. Why they were very brave to Gulliver? Because to them Gulliver must have looked very dangerous. He was 10 times larger than them, but they were walking all over his body. The king of this strange country, what was the name of that country? Lilliput, sent one of his noblemen to see me, to see Gulliver. He moves along Gulliver's body with 12 people behind him, just to guard him. He has the orders from the king, which he communicates to the giant. And who is the giant here? Gulliver, in the best possible manner. At first, Gulliver is unable to understand him, but later he comes to know that he was telling me where to find the most important city in that country, their capital city. They both are not understanding each other. That important person, that officer and Gulliver, they were not understanding each other but conveys their messages in one way or the other. I pointed to the strings round my body. Gulliver wants to get free, but he placed his own hands and feet, that officer placed his own hands and feet together to tell me that I was a prisoner to them and he cannot be released. He cannot get freedom now. He tells Gulliver that he can enjoy food and drink but cannot have freedom. This made me angry. And what do you think he must have done? What do you think Gulliver must have done? He got angry, so he tried to break the thin ropes and strings. And what happened next? At once, hundreds of arrows were again shot at Gulliver. Lots of them went into his skin, his hands, and they began to feel very sore and very painful to him. He laid still. Gulliver laid still and decided not to frighten those little people again. You see, children, for him he is a normal person and they were tiny. And for those Lilliputians, they are normal and Gulliver is a giant for them. It was true, they were much smaller than me, but I was their prisoner. Yes. Now let's see the picture. Next chapter's picture that's taken from your book. What can you see? The arrows on his face, people standing close to him. He is lying on his right side. Is it like that? Obviously, his left hand was a little bit loosened. Okay, let's see the journey to the city. The journey to the city, and there the first topic is the emperor's plan. Many people came to look at me. The strings binding Gulliver's left side are loosened enough that Gulliver can move a bit. Do you remember the picture that I showed you earlier? Okay. The little people also treat Gulliver's tiny wounds. Tiny, very small wounds, which makes his injuries stop stinging. I felt much better, but as I could not move much and as the day was hot, so he starts feeling sleepy again. He crashes for about 8 hours. He slept for about 8 hours. Thanks. And later he discovers that it was not because he was tired, it was not because of the hot day, it was all because of the sleeping potion that was added to his drink. A few weeks later, when I learned to speak their language, Gulliver discovers that the emperor is the one who ordered that Gulliver should be tied up and fed in this way so that he could be brought to the capital city. So why was he tied down? Why the sleeping potion was added to his ring? Because emperor wanted to take him to the capital city. He ordered that I must be tied down. He also told the people to bring a machine which could carry me to the capital city. And in this lesson, Gulliver says that you may think this whole thing seems like a cowardly things to do. Why cowardly things to do? Like tying a person, adding a sleeping potion. All this seems to be very cowardly thing to do, but really it's smart. Very intelligent on their part that they did like this. Next topic is the moving platform. These little people were very clever at mathematics. This thing Gulliver has found out about them that they were very good engineers too. While Gulliver's sleeping, the Lilliputians convey him onto a large carriage. The machine looked like a platform. These small people are great mechanics and already have lots of machines designed for hauling trees and other heavy things. Hauling means dragging something. Yes, they were already having such things. They had built the platform specially in the few hours since Gulliver appeared. Gulliver praises their ingenious mathematics and engineering. Ingenious, intelligent, very clever thing on their part, and begin a journey to the Lilliputian emperor. Now they plan to bring the strongest and biggest machine in the kingdom to carry to the city. I was asleep the whole time they were doing this, so he did not know anything about it, and later on he came to know about all this, whatever has happened to him. Now, again, a picture, an illustration from your book. You can very well see a moving platform, a wheeled machine on which Gulliver is tied down, so many guards all around him, and the soldiers on the horses carrying and dragging him to the capital city. Let's see the next lesson. I'm taken to the capital city. But the principal difficulty is to raise and place Gulliver in this vehicle. Which vehicle? That you have seen in the picture. It was very difficult to place him over there. He is raised into the engine. Very carefully, very gently, I was put down until I was lying still fast asleep by the force of that sleeping medicine. 1,500 of the emperor's horses, all of which are about 4.5 inches high, dragged Gulliver to the capital city. When we had been traveling for about 4 hours, I woke up. Gulliver awakens because one of his guards climbs onto Gulliver's face and sticks his spear up Gulliver's left nostril. Gulliver sneezes violently and he wakes up. This was such a ridiculous incident that has happened to Gulliver. And then the platform is mended. Something went wrong with the platform. And while he sneezes, the guards sneak off. They hid away. They ran away from there. The young men ran away so quickly and so quietly that I never saw them again. They make a long march remaining part of the day, and when night came we stopped and took rest, with 500 guards on each side of Gulliver. See, very strong army, very strong people, half with torches and half with bows and arrows, ready to shoot him if he offers to stay. If he is going to move a little bit, they will be ready to shoot him. The next morning at sunrise, they continue their march and arrive within 200 yards of the city gates about noon. Another picture, it seems as if there is an old temple. You can see very well Gulliver being tied down. His left leg is tied down with the door of this old temple. But at least he is sitting. My new house. And what was his new house? Obviously the temple that you have seen right now in the picture. Finally, Gulliver and all of his guards make it to the capital city, where they are met by the emperor and his followers, his court. The emperor with all his followers came out to meet us, but his officers does not want his majesty to suffer by any means. They said that I was too dangerous, so he was guarded by them. Gulliver is tied to an old, huge, by these people's standards, it was huge temple, esteemed to be the largest in the whole kingdom, which is no longer in use for religious purposes because a murder was once committed there. All the ornaments and furniture is carried away. The building was large, empty, and no one used it. In this structure or the building, it is determined that Gulliver should lodge there, he would stay there, he would live there. The great gate fronting to the north is about 4 feet high and almost 2 feet wide, through which it is easy for him to creep. He thought I would be able to get in and out of the building quite easily. My house is my prison. Although he was given a house, but still it was a prison for him. On each side of the door there was a small window about 6 inches from the ground. Gulliver is kept tied down to the ground as the tiny people build him a set of chains. 36 special locks were needed to fasten these chains onto me. Many thousands of cities inhabitants, people who were living in that city, many thousands of them used the opportunity to come and climb all over Gulliver. The workmen made sure that I could not break the chains. Very intelligent and very careful people. Finally, Gulliver's chains are done and he is freed of his ropes. They cut off all the ropes and strings. I sat up. Wow, wonderful. He can finally now stand up for the first time ever since arriving in this land. Then I stood up, and everyone is dumbfounded by his size. They shouted louder. Gulliver's chains allow him to move immediately around the gate to his temple, so he can lie down inside the building or stand up outside of it. I was very happy to be able to get up and move. My arms and legs felt very stiff. And Gulliver is pleased and sad at the same time. He was pleased because Lilliputians were kind to him, and he was sad because his house is a prison for him. Now let's summarize these two chapters. Gulliver sets off on the ship, the Antelope, to the South Seas, but strong winds wreck it, destroyed it. Gulliver lands on an island, and when he wakes up, he finds his arms, legs, and long hair tied to the ground. He can only look up, and the bright sun prevents him from seeing anything. He feels something move across his leg and over his chest. He looks down and sees, to his surprise, a 6-inch tall human carrying a bow and arrow. A large number of little men, no larger than Gulliver's hands, keep him prisoner. Gulliver struggles to get loose and finally succeeds in breaking the strings binding his left arm. He loosens the ropes tying his hair so he can turn to the left. They attack him with arrows. Gulliver stays still, not to get hurt. Then they bring him food and drink and plan to take him to the king, but still tied with strings. An official climbs onto Gulliver's body and tells him that he is to be carried to the capital city. Gulliver wants to walk, but they tell him that they will not be permitted. Instead, they bring a frame of wood raised 3 inches off the ground and carried by 22 wheels. 900 men pull this cart about half a mile to the city. He is moved to the capital city of Lilliput and is given a house. An old temple. What was his house? An old temple. Gulliver is still tied to the door of the temple as Lilliputians think that he is dangerous. This is all what has happened in chapter 2 and chapter 3 of this novel. And children, you are given the home assignment to summarize these two chapters in your own words. A sample summary is already been shared with you. Thank you and have a nice week ahead. Thank you, children.